darling, welcome back. Today we're gonna be watching a video from the Cozy Corner, which is a blog channel. If you have not seen it already, I very much recommend you checking it out because it's very different from him and it's been a lot of fun watching these types of videos from him. This is the deadly poison marketed as a miracle cure. Quite terrifying in theory, so I don't know how terrible this is going to get, but I'm very excited. I like learning these little niche things, and the way that he breaks it down is very fun and informative, so I've been really enjoying it. I hope you're looking forward to it. If you are new here, please do consider subscribing. It would really help me out. I'd very much appreciate it. Thank you. Don't forget to use code COZY or code MOAN for 10% off your order at Gamersubs. Thank you. Are you ready? Let's go.
Hello and welcome back to the channel. I'm going to start with two things quickly before we get into this video. Number one, today we are going to talk about some pretty gruesome I'm not gonna lie. So I would probably avoid eating to this one, especially like smoked meat. That's probably a big no-no for today.
Okay, I'm ready.
And number two, because this feels violently inappropriate to do at any other point in this video, make sure you guys go to gamersubs.gg and use code BLARG or code COZY for 10% off anything on the website. Thank you so much to Gamersubs for supporting the channel. Also, you guys may have noticed I have glasses today. They are not performative. They actually help. So I'm sorry for the glare. I know that that's probably going to be annoying, but on the bright side, I can now read, which is big. Okay, now that we are all done with that, I'm going to tell you guys a story of one of the most disturbing examples of corporate greed and negligence in modern history. One that directly claimed the lives of 31 women and left countless others permanently scarred, disfigured, and sick. First though, we'll have to go back to the year 1898. Just 4 days before Christmas, in an unheated, leaky, cold shed in Paris.
Why does he kind of look like Steve from Blue's Clues? Like, it's just the shirt, but I don't know, it being like black and white and this really big stripe across it, he looks like Steve. Blark's Clues. It's so cute.
A 31-year-old Mary Curie and a 39-year-old Pierre Curie were spending their cold winter night studying an ore known as pitchblende, a highly radioactive uranium-rich mineral. This was absolutely nothing new to them, as they seemed to have some sort of fascination for this uranium ore. According to some sources, they actually processed over 8 tons of pitchblende between 1898 and 1902. Unaware of its potential dangers, they used to grind it by hand, breathe it in, and even keep it in their pockets as they went about their daily routines. Thinking that the only side effect they were getting from this was the slight burns from handling it for too long. It was well documented by this point that uranium had tons of practical uses, but they had a feeling that this pitchblende had something more to give. And they were right. It was on that cold winter night that they discovered radium. The discovery of radium spread like wildfire, and the public was absolutely fascinated with this seemingly magical substance. It emitted heat, it would glow in the dark, and it gave off massive amounts of energy without using any sort of fuel. In hindsight, the list of products that included radium is quite shocking. We have to remember that in the early 1900s, not a whole lot was understood or known about radioactivity. Radium was added to medicine, toothpaste, cosmetics such as makeup and face creams. It was added to drinking water, chocolate, and even sold as a tonic to promote health called Radithor. In the early 1900s, radium was one of the most expensive elements on the entire planet.
Oh my
so naturally, people labeled it as luxurious and exotic. But here's the issue with radium. It's really toxic. Like really f***ing toxic. The immediate decay product is called radon gas. As you can probably imagine, a radioactive gas is bad. When radium or radon gas is ingested or breathed in, luckily for us, 80% of it is removed from the body via shit from a butt. But the other 20...
Thank God, honestly.
20% has an awesome little feature. Your body treats and processes radium the same way it does calcium. As we've been told since we were children, calcium makes for nice strong bones. You know what doesn't make for nice strong bones? Radium. So once your body deposits radium into your bones, it wreaks havoc on your bone marrow and bone cells. But don't worry, that's not quite all. Radon gas also emits alpha particles as well as gamma radiation. So it also has the risk of destroying and mutating your soft tissue cells. For those who might be a little more fluent in radioactive decay, you might be thinking to yourself, well, alpha particles aren't really that bad because they can't typically penetrate skin cells. Which, yes, that would be fantastic if it weren't for the fact that they were literally turning it into tonics and drinking it. Radium is so toxic that not only did it contribute to the leukemia that took Mary Curie's life in 1934, but it's so dangerous that even today, her notebooks are still so radioactive that they are kept in lead-lined boxes in Paris. With a half-life of 1600 years, it's quite unlikely that these notebooks will be removed from their lead-lined sarcophaguses anytime soon.
See, reading is dangerous, you guys. This is why I'm illiterate, okay? Take notes. See this? This is what happens when you read. You get weak bones.
Is it sarcophaguses or sarcophagi?
Sarcophagus.
Skip ahead to World War I. Not much more is known about radiation, but radium is in full production. Scientists learned that when you mix radium with zinc sulfide, it produces a glow-in-the-dark effect. This was an absolute breakthrough for military and industrial technology. The paint was used in all sorts of things like watch dials, clocks, military instruments, as well as airplane cockpits. Following the war, it was far more common to have women in the workplace. They're generally small.
Why does he say woman instead of women? I noticed that like earlier as well when he was talking about like the death of so many women. Is there only, are we all just one consciousness? Are all women same woman and just hive mind woman? Don't question. You're right. My bad. Sorry.
Their hands, as well as their higher attention to detail, made them the absolute perfect candidates to add this glow-in-the-dark paint to watch faces. Factories hired hundreds of these young women. Even some children as young as 11 years old were hired to paint these watch dials. Being a dial painter was actually seen as a prestigious job back in the day. It paid way higher than any other sort of factory or secretary job that were available to women at the time. But it didn't take long before these dial painters were given a strange nickname. People noticed that these women had a strange glow. Their hair, skin, and clothes would emit a similar glow that the watch faces they were painting gave off, which earned them the nickname Ghost Girls. Which, you know, in hindsight, kind of a fucked up nickname. See,
it's like it's kind of like a dead man walking sort of thing, calling them ghost girls, and they don't even know yet, and then it's gonna get like so much worse and everything. That's actually kind of sad. Like it started off probably like cutesy in like a sense, right? Because it's like you're glowing. Maybe, you know, we think that like ghosts have this like glow to them or whatever, so you're just ghost girls. Oh my god, look at you, you're so cool, you glow. And then, like, you know, fast forward a little bit and they might come back as real ghost girls.
Is what happens to a lot of them, but we'll get there. Some women would even embrace this strange phenomenon, wearing their nicest dresses to work so that when they went out dancing after their shift, they would emit this sort of shimmering glow. Even worse than that, some of them would paint their eyelids, lips, and teeth as some sort of fun joke or way to stand out with their friends. It wasn't long though before something odd had happened to one of these ghost girls. It all started with a young woman named Amélie Magia, or known by her friends and family as Molly. Molly was an early adapter to this new booming industry. She heard about this new magic element and thought about the prosperity it could bring herself and her family. She was hired alongside hundreds of other women to work at United States Radium Corp plant in Orange, New Jersey. The plant paid nearly 3 times what other factories would offer, and these women were assured by management and ownership that the radium was safe. And why would they think any differently? Because at this point, radium was still being advertised as something that is healthy and will keep you looking young. So to them, this seemed like a dream job. But what Molly and the others didn't know is that they had just signed their death warrants. With every single stroke of the brush, she unknowingly inhaled and ingested tiny radioactive particles straight into her body. Just handling radium unprotected is bad enough. But the problem was multiplied exponentially when the dial painters were taught a little trick to get their brushes to a more fine point.
Oh no, they put it in their mouth. Oh, they did the thing. They did the thing. We've all done the thing, right? When you're like, you're painting and you just dude, it's scary. I don't know enough to like be super precise and like actually list things, so take everything I'm saying with a grain of salt right now. But there are multiple instances of things being like portrayed as healthy or good for you, or like, oh, this is gonna improve your way of life, and like da 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 da. And it's like the worst thing ever. People used to say that cigarettes were good for you. Did they not? Did doctors not used to say, like, there was a certain brand, I think, that got like quote unquote endorsed by doctors or whatever? Like, there's so many things that are absolutely horrid for the human body. And people, at one point, people believed that it was healthy for you. Oh, no, dude. It's so crazy, like how little they knew about stuff, because it seems like they were just very confident with no evidence, nothing. Like, they just said something and everyone was like, yeah, okay, all right.
They were taught a technique called lip, dip, paint. They would roll the brush tip between their lips to get it to a fine point. Then they would dip it in the radium-based paint, and then they would paint the watch dial. This was done every single time they needed to add more paint to their brush. Each time the dial painters did this, trace amounts of radium would enter their body through their mouth. The first warning sign came to Molly in the early 1920s. Molly had noticed that she was getting persistent toothaches. She visited her dentist, who removed the offending tooth and sent her on her way thinking that it would heal up as normal. This though wasn't exactly a massive red flag. I mean, it was the early 1920s. Dental hygiene wasn't exactly the most studied and mainstream thing in the world yet, so something like a toothache wasn't exactly uncommon.
But now she has an opening, and like, yeah, it's already like getting into her like body from her doing the thing with like her lips and rolling the paintbrush and stuff. But now there's like an opening, there's an open wound in your mouth because you just had a tooth removed. Oh God.
There was a problem. Days passed, then weeks passed. The socket where her tooth was removed stayed wide open and unhealed. Along with the pain of living with an open wound in her mouth that refused to heal, Molly started to notice that her other teeth began to ache just like the one they removed did. Again, she would return to the same dentist to have those offending teeth removed, hoping that this would solve the problem. But each time she went in, she left with more problems than she got there with. Her wounds absolutely refused to heal. The inflammation has spread throughout her jaw, and she had shooting pain all the way around her face. But what Molly and her dentist didn't know is that this really had nothing to do with her dental health. They were just the first signs of smoke that the entire jawbone itself was starting to die. We briefly discussed it earlier, but to fully understand why her jawbone was dying, we need to discuss how radium affects our body. As I said before, radium behaves very similar to calcium, which, in case you weren't aware, is the most abundant mineral in the human body. And as we know, it is absolutely essential for maintaining healthy bones and teeth. When Molly would put the contaminated brush to her lips, her body would deposit the radium into her jawbones, her hip bones, her spine, her ribs, and all her other bones, just like your body would with calcium. Once your body has deposited the radium, it becomes part of the very fabric that makes up your bones.
And it's like, and it's probably like acid, like slowly like eating away at it and everything, because your body depositing it, you're just like, oh my gosh, that's terrifying to think of. Like, I'm imagining kind of what he showed earlier, where like when you drop like an Alka-Seltzer into like a thing of water, right, and you see it like just foaming and like breaking apart, that's the visual I get. Like, oh, that's so terrifying.
Meaning that it's not just going to disappear or be expelled someday. Like we stated earlier, alpha particles from radioactive decay can't penetrate skin. However, when the very source of it is coming from within your body, you're kind of it bombards your body with radiation day after day, year after year. The radiation damages every single part of the bone. The blood vessels, the bone marrow, the osteoblasts and the osteoclasts, which produce and remove bone cells respectively. The cells die faster than the body can replace them, which leads to the bones becoming necrotic. Necrotic equal dead. Over time, bones become weaker, fractures become more common, healing slows significantly or stops outright. Many x-rays of these ghost girls show abnormal bone growth, bone damage throughout their entire body, and in some places even having massive holes in their bones. In Molly's case, she was the very first person to develop something that has been aptly named radium jaw, or if you want to go the scientific name, osteonecrosis. The living bone that should have supported her teeth gradually became dead tissue. And here is another quick reminder that if you are eating, now is probably a great time to put the old fork down for a few minutes. Infections would develop deep inside this rotting bone. Pus would accumulate, and allegedly the smell was so bad that doctors and nurses that would enter the room would actually gag. For Molly, eating had become impossible, talking was extremely difficult, and even moving her jaw led to excruciating pain. Doctors who examined Molly, as well as cases similar to Molly, reported being able to see jawbone visible through gums. As the infection spread, larger parts of flesh had become detached from the dying bone. It was reported by physicians that you could literally stick your hand in and pull out pieces of bone from their mouth. Her jaw at this point had essentially turned into one of those videos you see of like pit masters pulling out the bone at the end of like a 13-hour smoke on a pig butt. Sorry, that was like a really gross example, but I feel like it was the most accurate thing I could think of. The craziest part about all of this is that somehow nobody had connected any of this to her workplace or Radium. Physicians were uncertain of the cause, and of course all the owners and management of these factories denied that there was any possible way that these extreme health conditions could come from their radium. Molly had finally succumbed to her injuries at the young age of 24 from a massive hemorrhage. I'm trying to keep this video as light as I can given the extremely disturbing topic we're talking about, but they make it extremely difficult when they labeled the official reason for Molly's death was syphilis. Her jaw fell off here, and their first thought was like, it's gotta be an STI. Like, I get that late stage syphilis is not a good sight, and I can kind of understand how they drew that conclusion, but it seems like an absolute massive injustice to Molly as well as all the other women who are suffering at this point to not even look into the workplace or the substance that they were putting into their mouth day in and day out for 8 hours a day. Another thing is, there's a sneaking suspicion that these corporations may have actually known how dangerous radium was. It's reported that the male scientists, chemists, and lab workers that handled the radium worked in far safer environments, using things like lead screens, using tongs when handling radioactive substances, wearing proper PPE, and having ventilation. All of that while these women were instructed to put it in their mouth like it was a sweet little treat. Cut to a few years after Molly's death, and not a lot has changed other than the body count. Women were dying, or worse yet, women were still alive, suffering from the same side effects that Molly had. There were stories of jaws disintegrating, teeth falling out, and breaking bones doing simple things like dancing or walking. But factories were still refusing to admit that their magic substance might be causing all of this damage.
Probably because they didn't want to have to like fully implement any sort of like protection. I mean, honestly, well, not even like, it's just for money, I assume, right? Because if you can't work with it to make it, you definitely shouldn't be like using it. And they're painting like watches. So yeah, they don't want to act like or acknowledge that it's bad, because then there goes the entire thing. Not even that you can't safely work with it, you can't even safely like purchase and wear it. So they're just trying to keep it under wraps, get as much money as they can while people still think that it's like a good thing, and they don't give a damn about the consequences, honestly.
That was until one fateful day. You can probably see where this is going. The chief chemist at United States Radium Corp, Dr. Edwin E. Lemon, had passed away from similar side effects that Molly and hundreds of these other women who handled this substance had dealt with. It was his death, as well as the mounting death toll from dial painters, that finally pushed for an official inquiry as to what was causing all of this. The inquiry was headed by a Dr. Harrison S. Martlin. Dr. Martlin had began to examine patients who were still alive as well as those who have passed away. His goal was to develop techniques to track radioactive substances that might be lurking in their bodies. Lucky enough, he was actually able to do it. This was irrefutable proof that radium was killing workers from the inside out. With this scientific proof, it was only a matter of time before these corporations' lies and deceit was exposed to the public. The first of these came in 1925 in the form of a lawsuit against United States Radium Corp by a Marlet Carlo, a former employee. Her sister had unfortunately already perished from the side effects of handling radium, so she was not willing to go down without a fight. Whether it was out of bravery or pure desperation, she did something that no one else was willing to do by this point. She was ready to legally challenge these massive corporations to prove that radium was not harmless. After a very long battle, she was able to settle out of court for a measly $13,000 or about $250,000 in today's money. The problem is the justice system wasn't really prepared to handle these slow motion disasters. Because these symptoms took potentially years to manifest, they essentially had run out of time to legally blame a company that they worked for a decade ago. But in 1927, the most famous of all these lawsuits had begun. After trying to find a lawyer for up to 2 years who would actually go to bat against these massive corporations, Grace Fryer had finally found one by the name of Raymond Berry. Berry had filed a lawsuit on behalf of 5 dying women: Grace Fryer, Edna Hussman, Catherine Schaub, Quinta McDonald, and Albina Laris. Each of these 5 brave women demanded $250,000, or about $5 million in today's money, for the medical expenses, pain, and suffering that they had endured. And I personally think that they deserved every single penny of that and then some. Due to the severity of the lawsuit, newspapers quickly picked it up and referred to the case as the case of 5 women doomed to die. Not exactly the most creative title, but it gets the point across, I guess.
Yeah.
By the time the first hearing had finally happened, 2 of the women were already bedridden, and the 3 others could barely walk. They had all mostly lost their teeth. Grace Fryer had to have a steel back brace, and allegedly all 5 of them were too weak to even raise their hands when taking the oath. I know what you're probably thinking. Wow, that corporation, they sure did sound evil. I bet they probably tried to delay the court hearings as much as possible, hoping that the woman would die before a verdict could be reached.
Wow, that's very dark. I didn't even think about that. Jesus Christ.
You're absolutely right, they did. But despite their deteriorating health, these women were absolutely in it for the long haul. United States Radium had, of course, continued to deny responsibility. They argued that the illnesses were not caused by radium, and that the woman had waited too long to press charges, and the statute of limitations had expired. But Big Boss Boy Barry was absolutely not having that excuse. He argued that there's no way they could have filed earlier. A, because symptoms take a very long time to manifest, and B, they were misled as to what was even causing those symptoms. With increased scientific research coming from Martland, as well as lots of public backlash, the company was forced to provide a settlement. The woman walked away with a measly $10,000 lump sum, as well as having their medical expenses covered for life, which to me is kind of bullshit, because like the company can clearly see that these women were not going to live long. So like the rest of their life expenses may have been like 2 fucking weeks. They were also given lifetime payments of $600 a year that were paid out in weekly installments. Again, a very underwhelming and, to me, borderline offensive amount of money to pay people who you essentially killed. Unfortunately, all 5 women did pass away after the case concluded, with the longest of them lasting for 5 more years. It's truly difficult to know how many women died because of United States Radium Corp. Many cases were undocumented, undermined, or flat out covered up in order to minimize financial losses. There were thousands of women that worked in these factories, and their lives were forever changed by an invisible threat that was allowed to go on for far too long because of a society that pushes profits over people. Luckily for the rest of us though, these women left a lasting impact outside of the courtroom. They helped establish that companies could and should be held accountable for workplace diseases even years after exposure. Their suffering helped establish tighter workplace regulation, industrial hygiene standards, and helped grow the field of occupational traditional medicine. Although OSHA wouldn't be created until the 1970s, the Radium Girls were widely regarded as one of the earliest and most important milestones in a long chain of events that led to modern workplace safety laws. Their fight helped establish that workplaces have a responsibility to protect their employees from hazardous materials as well as providing a safe workplace. A lot of the workplace protections that we take for granted would not exist without their refusal to accept that nothing was wrong. Life is really fucking hard for the best of us, let alone being a woman in the 1920s. They hoped for a better life and a purpose outside of servitude to their husbands. Rather than prosperity, they were met with the ugly face of unchecked capitalism. Their bodies lie today in lead-lined caskets, still highly radioactive.
That is incredibly sad. And I know that it might not really matter, but when you're gone and your body has to be like quarantined or treated like some sort of different way because of what you had to endure while you're alive, that is so sad to me personally. Like, you can't even have like a quote-unquote normal casket and just be like buried among like family or something like that. You have to be like locked away. That is so sad, honestly.
Tokens of proof left behind that shows what happens to other human beings when we put ourselves and our desires over the care of others. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next one.
Thank you, Blarg. Damn, dude. Okay, all right. This got very heavy. It's got a little touchy, very like tug at your heartstrings. But honestly, I really enjoyed this. Definitely, again, something I was not expecting. I thought that it was going to be more of like a hoax, like, oh, take this thing and it'll cure your baldness, you know, kind of sort of thing. So to have such a sad story, I'm very happy that I learned about it, but it does break my heart quite a bit, I'm gonna be honest with you. Please make sure you go check out the original video. It's gonna be linked down below. If you like my video, make sure you like and subscribe so I can see you in the next one. Thank you. Bye.